My fiancée said, "I gave your dog to a shelter. He shed too much and ruined my aesthetic." While I was at my father's bedside in the hospital, I said nothing. Just left the hospital, got my dog back, packed her designer clothes, and dropped them at Goodwill. When she came home to an empty closet and my dog sleeping in her spot, original post. I, 32 male, have been engaged to my fiancée for about 8 months now. We moved in together a year ago in my townhouse, the one I bought 3 years before we even met. My dog, a golden retriever I've had since he was 8 weeks old, has been with me for 6 years. He was there through my divorce from my first wife, through getting laid off, through the worst anxiety spiral of my life. That dog isn't a pet. That dog is family. Quick context. I work in IT infrastructure, make decent money, and own my place outright. No mortgage thanks to a small inheritance from my grandmother that I use for the down payment, plus aggressive saving. My fiancée works in marketing at some mid-sized firm. She makes okay money, but she's got expensive taste. When we first started dating, I thought it was cute. She'd point out designer bags and store windows, talk about wanting nice things someday. I figured everyone has aspirations. Red flags in hindsight. Sure, she made comments about my furniture being too masculine or too brown. She once suggested I get rid of my dog's crate because it ruined the flow of the living room. She asked me multiple times if I'd consider getting a smaller dog, maybe a hypoallergenic breed, because the shedding was out of control. I always said no. My boy wasn't going anywhere. Anyway, my dad had a heart attack last Tuesday. Got the call at 2 a.m. from my mom, absolutely hysterical. I threw on clothes, kenneled my dog, and drove 3 hours to the hospital. Asked my fiancée to check on him during the day, maybe let him out in the backyard a few times. She said sure, no problem. For 4 days, I basically lived in that hospital waiting room. My dad coded twice in the first 48 hours. I watched through a window as doctors did chest compressions on my father. I held my mom while she sobbed. I barely slept, barely ate, just existed in that fluorescent-lit purgatory waiting to find out if my dad was going to live or die. My fiancée called me twice during those 4 days, both times to complain. First call, the dog had tracked mud everywhere, and she had to clean it up. Second call, he knocked over her coffee table arrangement and broken a vase. I apologized both times, promised I'd deal with it when I got home, reminded her that my father was literally fighting for his life. Day 3, she calls again. I answer expecting another complaint. Hey, so I finally did it. I took him to the shelter. The shedding was ruining my aesthetic, and honestly, I just couldn't take it anymore. You'll thank me when you come home to a clean house. It's like a weight lifted off my shoulders. I didn't say anything. Couldn't say anything. My brain just stopped. Hello? Did you hear me? I said. I hung up. My dad was stable by then, still in the ICU, but the doctors said he was past the critical window. I found my mom in the cafeteria, told her I had an emergency at home, that I'd be back as soon as I could. She looked at me like she knew something was very wrong, but didn't push. I drove those 3 hours home in complete silence. No radio, no podcasts, just this cold, hollow emptiness in my chest. First stop, the shelter. I walked in looking like absolute death. Hadn't showered in 3 days, still wearing the same hoodie, probably smelled like hospital, and told them I was looking for my dog. Golden retriever, 6 years old, probably brought in within the last 24 to 48 hours. Thank God for their 72-hour hold policy. Thank God. They had him. He was in a kennel in the back, pressed against the corner, tail between his legs. When he saw me, he started crying, that high-pitched whine dogs do when they're overwhelmed with relief. I started crying too, right there in the middle of the shelter, sobbing like a baby while my dog licked my face through the kennel bars. The shelter workers had questions. Turns out my fiancée had listed herself as the owner on the surrender paperwork, but she couldn't produce any vet records or proof of ownership. The intake worker said something had felled off about the whole thing, but they couldn't legally refuse the surrender without evidence. I showed them 6 years of vet bills in my name, his microchip registration, the original adoption contract from the breeder. They released him to me immediately and made a note in their system about the fraudulent surrender. Second stop, my townhouse. My fiancée was at work, wouldn't be home for another 3 hours. I walked through the place slowly, really looking at it for the first time in months. It wasn't my home anymore. It was hers. My comfortable leather sectional, gone. Replaced with some white minimalist thing that looked like it belonged in a museum, not a living room. My vintage movie posters, gone. Replaced with abstract art that looked like gray paint splashes. My dog's bed, gone. His toys, gone. His food and water bowls have been swapped out for some designer ceramic set that she'd apparently bought for show because there was no food or water in them. The kitchen? She'd reorganized everything. My cast iron skillets that I'd spent years seasoning were shoved in a bottom cabinet, while her aesthetic-matching cookware took prime real estate. The coffee maker I'd had for a decade was gone, replaced with some $300 espresso machine I didn't know how to use. I went to our bedroom closet. Her side had expanded to take up probably 85% of the space. My clothes were crammed into one tiny section while her designer bags, shoes, dresses, and coats dominated everything else. I counted 8 designer bags, 12 pairs of designer shoes, countless dresses with tags still on them. Most of it was new. Most of it was purchased after we moved in together. And with a sinking feeling, I realized most of it was probably charged to the emergency credit card I'd added her to 6 months ago. I sat on the bed for about 10 minutes, just thinking. My dog sat next to me, head on my lap, still trembling slightly. Then I made a decision. I found garbage bags in the kitchen, the nice, thick contractor ones, and I packed every single piece of designer clothing she owned. Every bag, every shoe, every dress, every coat. Filled 9 bags total. Loaded them into my car. Drove to the Goodwill Donation Center and watched the workers carry all 9 bags inside. Got a tax receipt even. Wrote, assorted women's clothing in the description. Back to the townhouse. Changed all the locks myself. I'd learned basic locksmithing as a hobby in my 20s, one of those random skills that finally came in handy. Set up the new deadbolts, new doorknobs, tested everything twice. Then I pulled my dog's bed out of the garage where she'd apparently stashed it. Put it right in the middle of her side of the bedroom floor. Filled his bowls with fresh food and water from the bag of his food she'd also thrown in the garage. Let him settle in, tail finally wagging again. She got home at 6:30 p.m. I heard her key in the lock, then confusion as it didn't work. Then knocking, then banging. What the actual? Open the door. Why isn't my key working? I waited a full 2 minutes before opening it, just letting her stew. When I finally opened the door, her face went through about 6 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, relief, then absolute horror when she saw my dog sitting in the hallway behind me. Why doesn't my key work? And why is that dog back? I told you I handled it. I specifically. Come look at something. I turned and walked to the bedroom. She followed, still talking. I don't understand why you're being weird about this. It's just a dog. We can get a better one, something that doesn't shed everywhere, something small and cute that actually matches. She stopped dead in the bedroom doorway, stared at the empty closet. Her side, bare hangers. My side, my clothes neatly arranged. 3 seconds of silence. Then, where are my clothes? What did you do with my clothes? Donated them. You what? Donated them. The clutter was ruining my aesthetic. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. Those were designer. I had Gucci in there. I had a dog. Had being the operative word until you decided to give him away without asking me. It's a dog. You can get another dog. He's been with me for 6 years. He's family. Those clothes have been with you for what, 6 months? And most of them were bought with my credit card anyway. So, technically, I just donated my own stuff. She lost it. Full meltdown mode. Screaming, crying, throwing things. She grabbed a lamp off the nightstand and hurled it at the wall. Missed my head by about 2 feet. My dog started barking, positioned himself between me and her. I'm calling the cops. You stole my property. That's theft. Go ahead. Call them. She did. And honestly, I was glad. The cops showed up about 20 minutes later. 2 officers. 1 male, 1 female. My ex met them at the door, mascara running down her face, doing the whole he's abusive act while gesturing wildly at me. I stayed calm. Showed them the deed to the house, my name only. Explained we weren't married. She had no legal claim to the residence, and I was ending the relationship. Showed them the shelter paperwork where she'd falsely claimed ownership of my dog. Showed them the credit card statements, proving I'd paid for the majority of items in question. The female officer looked at the shelter paperwork for a long time. "Ma'am, did you surrender this dog to a shelter knowing it wasn't your property?" My ex's story suddenly got very confused. She thought we were sharing the dog. She hadn't realized the paperwork required actual ownership. She just wanted a clean house. The cops told her she could collect her remaining belongings, toiletries, books, non-disputed items, with a civil standby present, but the clothing issue would have to be handled in civil court. They recommended she leave for the night and find somewhere else to stay. Where am I supposed to go? This was MY home. "Ma'am, your name isn't on any documentation for this property. You'll need to make other arrangements." She left with 2 suitcases full of bathroom stuff, some books, random items from around the house. The engagement ring she ripped off her finger and threw at my face. I caught it one-handed. The cop saw the whole thing. "Nice reflexes," the male officer said under his breath. After she was gone, I sat on my couch, my leather couch that I'd pulled out of the garage and would be putting back in its rightful place tomorrow, with my dog pressed against my side. We sat there for an hour, just breathing. Then I called my mom to tell her I'd be back at the hospital tomorrow. That was 4 days ago. My dad is recovering. My dog is home. My house is mine again. I know some people will say I went too far. Maybe I did. But she disposed of my family while I was watching my father code on a hospital bed. She didn't ask, didn't discuss it, just decided her aesthetic was more important than a living creature who'd been with me through everything. The clothes are just things. She could take me to small claims court over them. I'll pay whatever the judgment is. Worth every cent to see her face when she realized her stuff was gone the same way my boy was supposed to be gone. Update 1, 6 days later. Oh boy. Okay. Things have gotten messy, eh? First, the good. My dad is out of the ICU and in a regular recovery room. He's ornery and demanding better food, which the nurses say is actually a great sign. My mom is finally sleeping more than 2 hours at a time. I've been splitting my time between home and the hospital, bringing my dog when I can because, forgot to mention this, he's actually a certified therapy dog. Did the whole training program 3 years ago. The hospital loves having him visit. Now the mess. My ex showed up at my townhouse 3 days ago with her mother. I wasn't there. I was at the hospital. But my neighbor has a Ring camera pointed at the street, and oh boy did she capture some footage. Her mother is a piece of work. Always has been. She never liked me. Thought I wasn't ambitious enough for her daughter. Thought my townhouse was cute but small. Once asked me point blank when I was going to upgrade to a real house. In the video, she's standing on my porch screaming about how I humiliated her baby and how I'm going to pay for this. My ex is doing the tearful victim routine beside her, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, talking about how she didn't know the dog meant that much and she just wanted a nice home. Then, and I had to watch this part 3 times to believe it, her mother pulls out a credit card and starts trying to jimmy my lock. On camera. My neighbor called me immediately. I called the cops. They arrived while the 2 of them were still on my porch. Trespassing warning issued to both of them, told not to return. Her mother's defense? I had stolen her daughter's belongings, and they were just trying to retrieve them. The cop asked if she had receipts proving her daughter owned those belongings. She did not. The cop asked if she had a key to the residence. She did not. The cop asked if she'd like to be arrested for attempted breaking and entering. She did not. But that's not even the best part. My ex has apparently been running a full PR campaign against me, telling anyone who'll listen that I kicked her out with nothing while my father was dying, that I'm an animal hoarder who chose a flea-ridden mutt over her, that I destroyed over $40,000 in designer clothes out of spite. $40,000. I literally laughed out loud when a mutual friend told me that number. The credit card statements show maybe $9 grand total in designer purchases, and more than half of that was on my emergency card after we got engaged. Emergency card. For emergencies. Not for Gucci. Speaking of that credit card, here's where I need to vent. I canceled it the same day I cleaned out the closet, but she'd already run it up during the days I was at the hospital. charges made while my father was literally being resuscitated in the ER. $647 at some designer consignment shop. $412 at a high-end shoe store. $189 at a spa. $95 at a fancy restaurant, probably with her mom. While I was watching doctors try to restart my father's heart, she was getting a pedicure. I've disputed all the charges as unauthorized since none of them were emergencies. The credit card company is investigating. In the meantime, I'm technically on the hook for the balance unless they rule in my favor. She also tried to get into my house yesterday while I was at work. I know because my neighbor texted me a photo of her car in my driveway. By the time I got home, she was gone, but there were fresh scratch marks around the back door lock. Someone had been trying to pick it or force it. I've now installed cameras on every entrance, added a motion sensor light to the back, and told my neighbor to call the cops immediately if she sees my ex or her mother within 50 feet of my property. Started documenting everything for a potential restraining order. Some mutual friends have reached out asking for my side of the story. I've kept it simple. She gave my dog to a shelter while I was at my father's deathbed. I ended the relationship. Most people, when they hear that, get it. A few of them have been weird about it. Well, but didn't you overreact a little? And those people are no longer getting responses from me. The engagement ring has a small chip in the setting from where she threw it at my face. Jeweler won't take it back. I bought a $5,000 ring with cosmetic damage sitting in my sock drawer. Might sell it to one of those gold buying places. Might just keep it as a reminder not to ignore red flags for 2 years. My dog has been glued to my side through all of this. Won't let me out of his sight. Follows me room to room. Sleeps at the foot of my bed with his head on my ankles. I think he knows something happened. I think he's scared I'll disappear like he almost did. I'm exhausted. Between my dad's health crisis, the breakup, and my ex's ongoing attempts to make my life miserable, I'm running on fumes. I just want to focus on my father's recovery and move on with my life. But she keeps pushing. Update 2, 13 days later. Final update, because I am done giving this situation space in my brain. Let's start with the wins. The credit card company completed their investigation and ruled entirely in my favor. All the charges she made during the week of my dad's hospitalization were reversed as unauthorized. Better yet, and I didn't even know this was a thing, they flag her for credit fraud. Apparently, when you add someone as an authorized user for emergencies only, and they instead go on a shopping spree while you're dealing with a family medical crisis, that's fraud. She disputed the reversal, claiming we were engaged and she had implied permission to use the card however she wanted. They asked her for documentation of this implied permission. She couldn't provide any because it doesn't exist. So now she's been flagged for fraud, which means good luck getting approved for anything better than a secured credit card for the next 7 years. Consequences. Next, the small claims court case. Yeah, she actually took me to court for the clothes. Got a lawyer and everything, which told me exactly how serious she was about this. We're talking maybe 8 or 9 grand in clothes, most of which she charged on my card, and she hired a lawyer whose retainer alone was probably 2 grand. The hearing was last Tuesday. I represented myself because, honestly, what was the worst that could happen? A judgment for 9 grand that I'd pay and move on? I showed up with documentation. Screenshots of her text message telling me she gave my dog to the shelter because he ruined her aesthetic. The shelter's intake form showing she falsely claimed ownership. 6 years of vet records proving the dog was mine. Microchip registration in my name. Credit card statements showing most of the disputed clothes were purchased on MY card. The Ring camera footage of her mother trying to break into my house. Her lawyer argued the clothes were gifts and therefore her property, and that I committed conversion by donating them without permission. My argument was simpler. She committed conversion first by surrendering my dog, my property, to a shelter without permission. I responded in kind. The judge looked at her, looked at me, looked at the shelter paperwork, looked at the text where she said she did it because the dog ruined her aesthetic. His ruling. Both parties committed conversion of roughly equivalent value. Damages cancel out. Case dismissed. No one gets anything. But here's the thing. She had to pay her lawyer. I didn't. So she spent probably 3 grand in legal fees to get absolutely nothing. while I spent 4 hours in a courthouse and the cost of parking. After the hearing, she tried to talk to me in the parking lot. Her mother was there too, which is my cue to keep walking. I didn't. I hope you're happy, my ex said. You ruined my life over a dog. I stopped and looked at her. Really looked at her for maybe the first time since this whole thing started. She looked smaller than I remembered, less intimidating. Just a person who made a series of terrible choices and couldn't understand why there were consequences. You tried to get rid of my family while I was watching my dad die. You didn't ask. You didn't discuss it. You decided your aesthetic mattered more than a living creature who's been with me for 6 years. Then you maxed out my credit card while my father was coding in the ER. Then you tried to break into my house. You didn't ruin your life. You just finally faced consequences. Her mother started in, "It's a dog. You can get another dog. You can't get another relationship like." Ma'am, I don't want another relationship like this. That's the whole point. I got in my car and drove away. Haven't seen or spoken to either of them since. The fallout has been interesting. About half our mutual friends quietly stopped talking to her after hearing both sides. 2 of her coworkers apparently reached out to people in my circle asking what happened, and when they heard about the dog thing, they stopped inviting her to after-work stuff. She's apparently been eating lunch alone in her car now. I don't know how I feel about that. Part of me thinks it's deserved. Part of me just feels tired. Her social media has been a parade of vague posts about toxic masculinity and knowing your worth, and pictures of her at expensive-looking places with captions like thriving. She's projecting hard. I don't check regularly, but friends forward me the highlights. My dad had his bypass surgery a week ago. It went well, better than expected, actually. He's recovering at home now, already complaining about the restrictions on his diet, which the doctors say is a good sign. My mom has been incredible through all of this. When I finally told her the full story about my ex, her exact words were, "I never liked her anyway. Too worried about appearances. Not enough about substance." Cool. Would have been nice to know that before I proposed, Mom. The townhouse feels like mine again. I moved my leather sectional back into the living room, took down the weird gray art, and put my movie posters back up. My dog's bed is in its proper place by the window where he can watch squirrels. His toys are everywhere, and I genuinely do not care about the mess. I've started seeing a therapist, partly for the trauma of my dad's heart attack. Almost losing a parent does things to you. Partly to figure out how I ended up in a relationship where someone slowly took over my entire living space, and I just let it happen. There's work to do there. I ignored a lot of red flags because she was attractive and confident, and I was lonely after my divorce. Classic mistake. The engagement ring sold for $3,200 to a jewelry resale place. Not what I paid, but better than nothing. I'm putting that money toward a trip for me and my dad once he's fully recovered. He's always wanted to see the coast. Never had the money or the time. Now I have both. I know some people wanted a bigger ending. Wanted her to lose her job, get publicly humiliated, have some dramatic breakdown. But real life doesn't really work that way. She lost the relationship, lost most of her wardrobe, got flagged for credit fraud, paid a lawyer to get nothing, lost about half her social circle when the truth came out. That's consequence enough. She's not going to have some big moment of realization where she understands what she did wrong. She's going to keep telling herself she was the victim. She's going to keep projecting thriving on social media while eating lunch alone. She's going to keep being exactly who she always was. Someone who prioritizes aesthetics over substance, image over reality, things over people. And I'm going to keep moving forward. My dog is currently asleep on the couch next to me, snoring so loud it's almost impressive. He's gained back the weight he lost during his 3 days at the shelter. He still follows me everywhere, still won't let me out of his sight for long. I'm okay with that. That's the ending. Not dramatic, not cinematic, just life. My dad is alive. My dog is home. My house is mine. That's all I wanted, and that's what I have. Thanks for reading. Go throw a tennis ball in the backyard now.